Yeah, most of the time, hand over fist is related to money. Like they talk about it, like he was making money hand over fist. So it's just hand over fist. I'm not exactly sure. I don't know where it comes from, but to me, it's just the motion of like maybe grabbing, right? Because hand over fist, you're grabbing, right? But I don't know. I could be wrong. Okay, so hand over fist, make a lot of money quickly. It has a nautical history, so it's something to do with sailing. Let's see. Okay. Okay. So I was saying it's going like this and grabbing stuff, but actually it comes from when you're on a ship, and like back in olden days, you know, they would climb a rope to climb up the sails, hand over fist to move up, right? So when you're making money, if you're climbing the rope, you're elevating your status, right? So you're making a lot of money. So it comes from that. Like it just means to earn money in a fast way. So.
Can you be an opposite, like using money in a quick time is how you get, and then you was talking about like losing money.
Mm-hmm. So to lose money, you wouldn't say like fist over hand. Like you wouldn't say that. You would maybe say like I don't know. I want to say like, but that would be like if you're burning through money means you're like spending it really quickly. So if money burns a hole in your pocket, that means you spend it too easily. So, yeah, burning through money or money burns a hole in your pocket would be the opposite. You're spending it too quickly. Let's see. Okay. So yeah, hand over fist just means make money very quick, burn through money, and burn through could be anything really. Like burn through money. Oh, you have a really bad cold. You burn through 5 boxes of those tissues, right? So it's just to go through quickly. Like if you had like a box of tea bags and you used them all up in like one day, wow, you really burned through that tea, right? So it's just to go through it. But then money burns a hole in my pocket. Right? Because it's just saying like there's a hole in your pocket and the money's all falling out, right? So you reach in and it's like, huh? What? I have more money, right? So it burns a hole in your pocket. Right? Other phrases, other words. You? Yeah.
One, I watched movie last week. They said, who can I trust? Ants fear the nest.
Say it again.
Who
Can I trust?
Ants fear the nest.
Ants fear the nest?
A-N-T-S.
Ants fear the nest. That's the first time. What movie was it?
Last week, I don't remember, but it was HBO or
Ants fear the nest. That's a new one for me. can check. Take a look and see what we can find. Yeah, I don't see that as an idiom. I would need to see it more in context of what they were talking about, and then I'd be able to tell you. So, if you over the week, if you figure out what show or whatnot, and you can send me a link, I can watch it and I can figure it out. Okay. So, and spirit nest. Yeah, I don't know that
You
one.
cannot trust anyone because ants live in a nest, so you cannot trust.
Yeah, but ants live in a nest, right?
Yeah.
So to me, yeah, like I don't know. I would need to see the conversation in fuller context because sometimes people can make up idioms that are just new, right? Their own, right? So I'm not quite sure. That's a good one. I'll try and figure out which show and send me the show I want to see.
Okay.
I want to figure it out. Okay. Any others before we move on?
Smoke without fire.
Smoke without fire. Smoke without fire. That's another one. It's a song. Smoke without fire. I've heard where there's smoke, there's fire. Are you sure it wasn't that? Where there's smoke, there's fire. That's a more common idiom.
Oh, really? Okay.
Where there's smoke, there's fire. Smoke without fire? I don't know.
It's a contrary.
Well, no, it works. I mean, that could be possible, smoke without fire, right? But I'm not sure what it would necessarily mean. Like it's getting too hot? I don't know.
Is
It's
it
getting
about rumor? Or
smoke without fire. Maybe. Maybe that's what it's in reference to. Yeah. But also where there's smoke, there's fire. That's in reference to, so if you hear a rumor, it's probably true, right? So like where there's smoke, there's fire. If you think you see a problem is probably there, right? There's no smoke without fire. There's no smoke without fire. Yeah, that's the same. That's the same as this,
yeah.
right? There's no smoke without fire. So this is the more common one that I've heard. I haven't heard that one, but that one makes sense. There's no smoke without fire. But where there's smoke, there's fire, or there's no smoke without fire. Was that what it was? Yeah, there's no smoke without fire. I mean, yeah. So, but it just basically means like the smoke would be like the rumor, right? And most of the time, you know, the rumor would probably have some basis. Not always, of course, sometimes it's a lie, but you know, if it seems like the fire is over there because you see smoke, then it's probably true. Okay. Any others? No?
Contemplate.
Contemplate. So that's to think deeply about something. Like ants fear the nest, you know? I need to contemplate on that one for a while. I need to think about it, like really think about it. Think about why it would mean maybe that you can't trust anyone. Okay? Alright. If there's no more, I'd like to get into, Danny, you got one? Clutter. A mess. A pile of stuff. Right? Little kids' rooms can be a clutter of toys and clothing. Right? So during in between classes, the hallway is cluttered with students. Okay? So it's when things are just, there's a lot, right? So much that it's a mess. Okay? After about 4 o'clock until 6:30, Zhongshan North Road is impossible to get out of Tianjin, right? It's cluttered with cars, okay? So it just means a lot of stuff making a mess.
With cars.
So Einstein has a quote, and he said, so if they say that a cluttered desk, a desk that's messy, is a sign of a cluttered mind, a mind that has too much going on in it, what does an empty desk mean?
No idea.
Alright? So what he's trying to prove is, well, just because you're smart doesn't mean you have a messy desk. You know?
So that means the person, if the one person, his or her desk is messy, that means he or her is smart, right?
Well, there's just a lot in their mind, right? So they have a lot of things in their minds, right? So it's referencing that they're smart, but it's also maybe they're too smart that it's a mess up there, right? Because I'm sure you've met really smart people that know a lot of things, but they couldn't teach you about those things if they tried because they're in their own thoughts, right, of how it is, and they can understand it. But then some people who aren't as smart as that maybe are able to express their ideas more easily, right? So it just because you're really smart doesn't necessarily mean that, like, because I've had professors in universities and they're experts in their field, but they can't teach the subject properly because they know it, and so they talk about it the way that they know it, but you're way below them, and so you're just going, what? Hello, this is an introduction class. I don't understand what you're talking about, right? So it's Einstein is just saying if a cluttered desk is a sign of a cluttered mind, what does an empty desk mean? Do you have an empty mind? Right? Are you an idiot if your desk is clear of stuff? Like, so he's just saying like it's a logical fallacy. You know what logical fallacy means? Do you know what fallacy means? Fallacy means untruth, right? So logical fallacy. So in like philosophy, logical fallacies are talking about using logic, you know logic, right? Using logic to say a lie. So using a logical process to tell a lie. Right? So it's a way that you can win an argument by using a lie. Because you're using a logical thought process. So if someone goes, well, by your logic, if x equals y, then by that same logic, y equals z. And then it's like, no, it doesn't work that way. Because not everything is the same, right? So that's a logical fallacy. Let me look up an example, because I've used them before in my life, but I
So logical fallacy means person is logical liar, professional liar.
Well, they're just, so politicians use logical fallacies to talk about things, you know? So, alright. So, for example, there's different types of logical fallacies, and this is like a whole course that is taught in colleges. But ad hominem, that means that it's an attack on the person. So you're saying like, oh, that person, I saw him once yell at a dog, so, you know, it's attacking him, and say that he's someone that wants to change a rule or something, and you're like, well, I saw him kick a dog once, so we can't listen to that guy. Instead of attacking the rule that's changed, that might be a good rule, but you just don't want that rule to be changed, you attack the person, and so then people go, he's a bad guy, I don't like that rule, right? So it's using a logical fallacy, right? So there's different types, there's ad hominem, there's begging the question, there's several different types. Let's see, creating a straw man, guilt by association. So guilt by association is like, oh, his friends are criminals, so he must be a criminal. Not necessarily. Maybe he just has bad friends, right? Right? And don't worry, I don't think, Danny, that you have criminals for friends. Okay. Alright. So, alright, well let me get into working on what we were continuing, or what we were working on last week, right? So we needed to work on introduction and kind of going into writing your suggestions, right? So you have your forms from last week where you had the problem, right? And then you were brainstorming, right? Because that's what we did last week, we were brainstorming. Alright? So now we're going to start doing the pre-write or the rough draft. And the first thing that we write is the introduction, right? So did any of you start with that introduction already? Okay, so with the typical introduction, it's just like even in an email, the introduction is typically like one sentence, right? I'm writing you in regards to blah, 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 right? That's a short and condensed version because most emails are not paragraphs long. If I open an email and I see it's a big long page and it's, I'll read that later, right? This email, you want it to be really quick. That's the whole, it's much faster, right? So when you're writing a proposal or writing a report, okay, that's typically longer form writing. So with an introduction, typically you have an introduction to what this is going to be about, okay? So in business writing, it'll be like this report is in reference to XYZ, right? And then you start talking about it, okay? So you want to give a general outline of what will be in the paper. So in a typical 5-paragraph essay that we teach students, you have kind of your catchy lead, okay, which kind of draws the reader in. Well, we don't need a catchy lead, all right? In business writing, a catchy lead would be like a quote or a question or something to get the reader's interest. Well, business writing, sorry, it's not that interesting. It's very cut and dry, right? So you don't need to pull someone in. They're reading it because they have to read it, because it's a report, right? Okay? So you don't need that catchy lead, but then you go into introducing the topic, giving background, all right? And then after that, you give what's called a thesis statement, okay? So typically, have you heard of a thesis statement before? Yeah, okay. So a thesis statement is basically summarizing what your argument is, okay? So it's providing your argument, all right? So with an introduction, I said that you should talk about something that you would like to change, right? There we go. Alright, so talk about something that you'd like to change. And it doesn't have to be big, okay? So then you're going to introduce the problem, talk about consequences, so what happens because of the problems and why it needs to change, alright? So the why it needs to change is your argument, that's the So you would say something like, let me think of a simple sort of thing. Alright, so I'll stick with the coffee maker idea, alright? Just simple off the top of my head. So you say, this report is
Yes.
looking into the
The
benefits of purchasing a coffee maker for our department. Okay, now, granted, if you're buying a coffee maker, you're not gonna be writing a report about it, okay? But, just for the sake of using it as a topic, right? So, this report is looking into the benefits of purchasing a coffee maker for our department office. So it's just flat out stating, what is this about, right? Okay? So then you'd say, consequences, what happens because of the problem? So you introduce that. Each morning, waste money and time going to buy
best
overpriced coffee
buy
to start their day.
to start. Going to
So going to buy overpriced coffee to start their day. And then you could say, our thesis statement. By purchasing a coffee machine, we can be more, productive in the office at an earlier time and it can have the
buy purchasing
have the effect of team bonding in the morning. Okay? I don't know. This is all off the top of my head. Alright? But do you see how I'm basically setting it up? Right? Okay? So this is what this is about. Here's the problem. Now, if you have more than one problem that's being created, you can address those. Okay? And then by purchasing this, and then after that, so this is saying what will be the benefit, why it needs to change, and then you can say, so what you're going to do then is list what the body paragraphs are going to be about after that. Okay? We are taking a look at 3 different coffee machines to purchase for our office, right? So that's then addressing what the solutions are going to be that you're talking about. Okay? So basically, you can see that there's 4 sections of this introduction, right? So introducing the problem, the consequences that it creates, why it needs to change, and then kind of, and well, actually, this is introducing the problem, but it's also, it's not really introducing the problem, it's introducing, I should rephrase that, not introducing the problem, introducing what the report is about, okay? So the first part and the last part kind of talks about what is in the report and what the structure of the report is going to be, okay? So we will review
Review.
different coffee makers Okay, so we'll review the different coffee makers in this report and choose the best option. So now you can jump into, so it's a transition into the next part, that's the solutions. Okay, so why don't you try and figure out a way in which you can structure your introduction paragraph for the problem and the solutions that you have, okay? By simply starting off with, this report is looking at blah, 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 okay? Whatever your problem is. And I'll come around and I'll talk to you individually about it, okay? So we're not thinking, see, I want you to do it. So as a report, yeah, that what you can do is you to your paper from last week. Information. Yeah. So what you can do is you can say, this report is going to talk about any problem you have with what we're going to do with it. And then you can say, and then you can state the problem a little bit more, and then say why you can change to reduce the how people save this money. Okay. So now when you the one that you had before was
Yes.
the password table group. Okay. So then you say this report is in reference to permission to create passwords for the ability to create passwords for payroll or in order to streamline or in order to make the voice more efficient. To create. Right, because that's what you were talking about, right? The passwords to create passwords. Well, what passwords? Passwords for what would be some sort of basically that makes sense. So then you can create what problem is it having. So you can say it has the HR, payroll, whatever you're typing. So, yeah, then you can state the problem that's happening and then say, we will look at different solutions for this. So don't go into, you want to be general when you're introducing this. Don't go into detail. Okay, you offer no detail in the introduction. The detail is saying, we're just going to look at solutions. Okay? So that the introduction basically gives the person an idea of what they're going to see in the report. Right? and then say this is going to, suggest or, make recommendations for. So you can use the phrases, suggest or make recommendations. In that introduction, when you're talking about the solutions, okay? Don't make it personal. Just say this report is making suggestions, okay? So when you're doing this, just say, this report or this paper is going to make suggestions for, so don't personalize it, no we, no I, no, okay?
So,
Say this is talking about suggestions to solve problems to our wireless.
so we make some recommendations to do what? We don't use,
So what you can do is you can say, so if we look at this report is looking into benefit for treatment possible made for our department office. Each one effectively with 1 in 5 phones available, 5 copies or everything, 5 purchasing copies, we can be more productive. So there's nothing. So you can use we, right? We will review different documents and report issues. Right? You can say something like, this is suggesting solutions to solve our transmitter and receiver issues that we have, something like that. Right? But don't say me is okay. Right? Alright, now don't go into too much detail with the problem, okay? Because this is just an introduction. Then the next paragraph, you're gonna talk about the problem you play. Okay? So just say this is talking about this problem, and then the next paragraph will be about the problem, blah, 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 blah. Or actually, no. I think this is okay. Okay, yeah, that's good. Okay. Okay. Good. Instead of wrong, you can say eight. O, C-O-R-R. Incorrect. I-N-C-O-R-R-E-C. Okay, and make sure you're breaking different solutions. So one solution and another solution, so you, but this is the problem. Okay. Alright. Okay. So. Okay. Okay. So, that looks like a good introduction. Okay. Quick and to the point. So you don't need to, so this is your kind of report. So you can just say this report is about an issue for teaching assistants. Because that's what a report is, right? A report is our report. So yeah, you can say this report is about or an issue regarding teaching assistants. Yeah. Mhm. like a major problem. Because there might be but there might be more than one problem.
Talk in the
Well, that's you use the if they know what the problem is going to be about. So you use just saying that there is a problem. This is what we're talking about, and then you talk about that problem. Right. Changing the. Okay. So this should be at the end. This we came, or we have come up. There. Yep. Yeah, but this sentence should be here, and that's okay. And then you start with this.
purchase.
Okay. So what you do is you can say, this is get one.
Purchase.
Students. Student information.
Someone they cannot go to P because they have
Injury.
the injury or
Okay.
something, or any extra stuff.
Okay.
Or those reading or stuff.
So you can say regarding, students. Maybe use of the library. Yeah, use of the
We
library.
can more productive in the corporate office.
During the school day. And then this is where you introduce it. Okay.
Productive.
Some students can
Productive in the office.
So, okay, that's good. I think that's a very good. And then you say, instead of solutions, my solutions, you just say solutions.
Oh, that's the solution.
Yeah, some, or some solutions. Okay. Benson's approaching a new style of uniform.
Oh,
Yep. Yep. Of uniform for security guards. Okay. Because. Okay. Instead of their, you should say our. Because our uniforms. And then uniform would be plural. Because it's everyone's, right? There's more than one uniform. Our uniforms.
force.
Mm-hmm. And then you need to say have been, right? Have been unchanged.
Have been unchanged.
Because then it's past perfect. So have been unchanged for 30 years. And then new sentence, period, capital B.
By
By purchasing new style clothes, comma, it provides.
provide
Yep, subject verb. Okay. More. What is this? Safe. Safe and comfortable. Safe and comfortable what? More safe. How?
we feel more safe and comfortable.
Okay, so then you should say more safe and comfortable clothing for security.
Clothing
For security. And they can help avoid.
can help avoid.
Can help avoid.
Or maybe help us
Help us avoid.
avoid. And then you don't need to have from unreasonable people. Just take that out and just say disputes. Okay? Alright. And then you can say, we will look at several solutions for this, or several ideas for new uniforms.
Okay. Anyone have questions? Further questions?
Solution.
So don't just do commas. So I know in Chinese, in the Chinese language, a lot of times there will be a lot of things to say in comma, and more things to say in comma, and more things to say in English.
No.
Oh,
So when in doubt, put a period. Okay? So when you're not sure, don't put a comma, period, and then write another sentence, and then period, and write another sentence, okay? So, and I see that a lot. I see that a lot with Chinese language users, switching that into English. And what it creates is it creates run-on sentences. Now, run-on sentences would be a sentence that is so long that there's really no end, and it just not a lot of pauses, and it keeps going, and then so you have to keep reading it, and then keep going, and like whenever I see those, and I corrected 78 papers in the last week, and a lot of them were like had run-on sentences, and even in my mind, it's even though I'm not saying it out loud. Okay, so that's one thing to keep in mind. You don't want to just keep adding commas and adding more information. You have to include full stop periods. Okay, and don't feel bad if you do it. I understand it's a language thing.
yeah.
It's just from Chinese language, and it's okay in Chinese language. Okay, but just make sure that you just stop and then continue on with another idea. Okay, so alright, so capital T. Yeah.
So we'll do it.
Yeah. And well, and it's not to solve the solution, it's to solve the problem. So capital T. Right? Yeah, there you go. So just to solve the problem, right? Because to solve this solution, if it's a solution, it's already solved, right? Alright, and then now you can start writing those solutions. And so for the solutions, you could do several things. You could do bullet points for solutions, or you could write paragraphs. Okay? Off this.
We
Ask for help.
seven.
No. Come to each other. To ask for help. Yeah, because there's only one of you, right? Efficient. Not get help or force that. Yeah. I didn't see the force that. Yeah, that works. Okay, good. Now the solutions. Now write solutions. Okay. All right. Okay.
Too short.
Well, you don't want an introduction to be long. You want an introduction to be
Yeah,
short.
it's not job on pen, so I cannot write.
You sound like one of my students. And also, look at this, hey, what's this right here?
Thank you.
There you go. Problem solved.
I just ended the.
Okay. No, I think that's good. Now you can start listing solutions, right? Our first solution is this, right? And you can do bullet points, you can write paragraphs, it's up to you, okay? Good. The most important what? The most important thing to think about, the most important thing to do. Okay, so if you're using importance an adjective, right? The most important what, right? Because if you just say the most important, then they don't know what is important, okay? So the most important solution, the most important thing to think about, the most important thing to do, the most important piece of equipment, right? What is it? Because you can't just have an adjective by itself, right? CK, not KE. That's okay. Just practice, right? Okay. So. Okay, good. Based on what those solutions? So are you saying here that this is where you're gonna introduce the solutions? Is this just the problem? Okay, so on these solutions, okay? And then you can start listing solutions, right? Go to ID to ask for permission. Instead of one stay, you can say as stay. Yeah, you could write solutions in an underline and just get a bullet points that's or possible solutions. Listed as others, right? Okay. Capital I, change. Otherwise, they read it as its office, capital T. Yeah. Okay, good. Those are good solutions. I can feel the emotion. Yeah. So this is not necessarily an assigned person, it's an assigned schedule to do the job. Just check, right? And that always sounds better if you say assigned person, then it feels like it's falling on one person, but if you say it's an assigned schedule, it's like, we're sharing, right? Easy to understand. Yeah. Understandable. Understandable. Good, that's a good process. I wanna see the solutions, I only read the intro last time.
And they have so many iPads, right? Right? This school has too many iPads. Okay? So instead of look, say like. Policeman like style. L-I-K-E. So it looks like it, right?
Like L-I-K-E.
Yeah.
Your Iron Man like.
Yes, yes.
Sailor.
Sailor.
Sailors like.
Yeah, so it just needs singular, sailor like. Or do you mean like Navy? Or is that what you mean?
Yeah.
Okay, so instead of sailor like, you could say military like.
Military like.
Okay. All right. I like seeing the different styles of solutions being offered, whether they're bullet points, whether they're talking it out in a paragraph. So if it's talked out in a paragraph, if it's a simple solution, bullet points work the best. If it's something where you want to add more information, and explain your case, then paragraph by paragraph case works for that. Okay. I like that I'm seeing development of ideas and the logical argument behind it. It's good. You're not creating logical fallacies, right? Okay, and strawman. That's not the way to win a problem, right? To solve a problem. So, next class, I didn't realize this because the other class we had canceled one class, and so I thought that there were, well, not canceled, but we postponed it because of the Lantern Festival and it got tacked onto the end. And so I thought that there were 3 more classes when in reality we had this class and next class. Next class is the last class in here. So what I would like you to do is I would like you to finish writing this up, okay? And the conclusion would just be simply which solution, you only need 2 at a minimum, okay? If you have more, that's fine. But then the conclusion is going to be your opinion of which one is best, okay? So simply, you could say something, I recommend that based on the evidence supplied,
Evidence.
we go with then X option because, okay? So the conclusion can be simply this, alright? I recommend that based on the evidence supplied, we go with, and then you choose your option, whether it's option 1, 2, 3, or whether it's the option that we have admissions make accounts for new students, whatever it was that you think is the best one, because, and then you give your reasoning. Okay? So the reasoning is totally up to you, whatever solution you think is good, and just make it a simple statement at the end. Alright? It doesn't need to be this long, well, it would be great if we use this, but really, like, this one's better, no. Just make a recommendation and say, on the evidence that's supplied before, hopefully in the solution that you've supplied a little bit of evidence as to why it's a good solution, okay? And then you just make that statement at the end, okay? As the last paragraph. Alright, and then next week, I'll take a look and I'll go through and I'll make corrections with you and whatnot, but also, once more, remember to keep your ear out for any sort of new phrases, statements, that sort of stuff, alright? And then I will see you next week, okay? Alright, next week.
Next.
Not next week. Yeah. So, is it 28th or 29th? One of the two.
28. 28.
Okay. So, yeah, because next week I won't be here. Well, I'll be here, but I won't be. Yes, not at TAs. Okay. Alright, so if you're done, you can go ahead and head on out.
Thank you.
Welcome. Yeah.
I haven't heard someone say articulation.
Mm-hmm.
Articulation.
So what's the difference between
That gets into a more speech pathology. Pronunciation is just how you pronounce it, right? So articulate can be two ways. Being articulate would be, so if I'm articulating all of the letters in all of the words that I am saying them in a very clear way. And that's how we talk to younger kids, right? You articulate the way, instead of articulate, right? You're saying articulate, right? So it's being clear about something. So if you're very clear, it's not just talking about the words. It's talking about being clear in your speech and being clear in what you're saying. So that's articulation. Pronunciation can change because there's British pronunciation, right? There's American pronunciation. Even in America, you have like you got the southern pronunciation, you know, the way that they say things is a little bit different than the way that we say things in the Midwest. Or, you know, hey, I'm walking here, like in New York, or like in California, it's like, no, man, you just gotta realize that it's just a little more laid back in California. So that's pronunciation. So it's how it's said. Articulation is being clear with your words. It's different. Okay, so pronunciation is related to articulation, but articulation, so if someone's very articulate, you can understand what they're saying. And it's not that you're understanding the words, it's that they're explaining something very clearly to you. Okay, so you can be articulate and have a really good vocabulary and be able to express yourself very well. That's not pronunciation. You're not being pronunciationist, right? You're just being an articulate person, right? So pronunciation is how you say the words. Articulate is how you express yourself and how you use your vocabulary.
So articulate is more specific.
Here's the thing, it's more specific and it's more broad, depending on how you're using it. Okay?
Thank you.
But yeah, it's more specific in the sense of you're able to express yourself better. So if someone's articulate or their articulation is very good, it means that they're able to express themselves very well. But then if they have very good pronunciation, it's just that they're good at pronunciating. It's the way that they say the word. It's very good.
It's about accent.
Not necessarily accent, but yeah, there's overlap. Yeah, kind of. There's overlap. But yeah. So I don't know. Does that help?
Yeah, sure.
But then articulation for like a curriculum for school, that's a whole nother meaning. That's meaning like articulation means you're integrating first grade, making sure they're reaching a certain level, so then by second grade they're at that level, and then you're making sure that you're teaching certain things, so then by the next level they're at that level. So that's articulation of the curriculum. So that's completely different meaning.
So articulation has a lot of different meanings.
It's not a lot, but it has several. It has like maybe 3 or 4 different meanings. But when you're talking about language, articulation is being able to clearly express yourself. Because you have the vocabulary, you're able to say the words correctly, right? And then when you're talking about pronunciation, articulation is making sure that you're articulating each syllable and each word, or each letter in the word. Because the way that you would say like color, right? You don't say color, right? You don't pronounce all of the letters in the word, you say color, right? So to be articulate when I'm pronouncing the word color, would it be color? And you say that when you're teaching kids spelling, so they go C-O-O-L, right? So they can visualize the words. So the way that you talk to kids sometimes is you're being very articulate with each word. So you're articulating each syllable and you're articulating each letter so they can imagine what it is. So I'm being clear with my pronunciation. So when you're talking about articulation related to pronunciation, you're being clear about how it's pronounced, or you're exaggerating it as well, okay? But when you're talking about being articulate, you're just a person that can express themselves very well, okay?
Thank you.
When I first started explaining it, I didn't know if I could articulate it very well. But by explaining it to you, I was able to think about it and say it much better.
Because my teacher say that word to the parents during meeting time, conference time. Yeah, so
What grade?
grade 1.
Okay, so grade 1, they're talking about the child's ability to express themselves.
Yeah.
Why, are you trying to do a little translation?
No,
No.
because I'm listening. I'm here.
Sure, thank you.
I ever heard someone people say,
Ever, or you often?
no,
Never. Okay, so you heard.
heard someone.
Ever, that's a little.
Say, we are